All right, we're live. Good morning, Abe.
Good morning, Matt. How you doing?
Doing well. Feel pretty good today. Feel rested. Got better sleep last night. So
It's good.
anyhow,
It's good.
I was doing some research the other night, so kind of got ahead of myself and stayed up a little late. So, but anyhow, a lot of good stuff I think hopefully comes from today. So hopefully some data for everybody that helps them make some sense of things. So, but
Awesome.
But yeah, so we're going to talk about I guess the future, kind of what we think the future agent looks like. What we could talk about some concepts of as far as making sure you always keep your foot on the gas in your business and income, right? And then so we could just jump in some other things about the market, some analysis about the market. So what do you want to hit first? Do you want to talk about the future agent or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Or maybe start with where we are in the market. I think it's kind
in the
of a
market.
good place. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we were talking about Investable. You want to, so maybe talk about the future, maybe of what RE, like what we're kind of just going over. Yeah. Let me share my screen here and kind of talk about some things. So, you see this okay? Let's see. So, we're in a market right now where agents are feeling a lot of pain because of this right here, because we went through this valley here. And I think that the thesis right now is that we're kind of going to be in a homeostasis for a while, right? Like we're going to stay the same. Rates are going to kind of stay high, and we're going to see the same amount of homes trading. Still tight inventory, still demand outpacing supply, new homes hopefully coming online to help ease some of that. But it's still, you can see this as new homes. It's not to a degree. We do know that new homes are becoming a bigger percentage of sales, but it's not anything to that significant of a degree. But I saw this when I did my research the other day, and I just the two markets that, I just did two markets we're in, and just try to look at the agents that grew versus agents that had negative growth. And it seems that higher producing agents were hit by negative growth more, which makes sense. They're going to have larger numbers that are going to play out to the averages of what the market's doing. But it's just interesting that, that you've got half the agents, or a little less than half in North Orange County, that actually had almost doubled their business on average, and then agents who shrunk by half, and they all ended up averaging out to around the same average production level. Pasadena is a little higher that, but the numbers play out the very similar way. These agents growing, these agents shrinking, and again, these are averages. But I think it just goes to show that, not everybody just takes a hit across the board. So even though if earning potential is down for the industry, it's never distributed evenly, and there's agents who are making out sort of better with that. But anyway, but that's just as far as the agent goes. But I do think that what I wanted to talk about was just sort of the yield curve. Talk about that a little bit to just explain what that is. And you brought this up a lot with me as far as the yield curve being very predictive. And this is the guy that sort of what the yield curve inversion is, and I'll try to explain this, is basically when a 10-year treasury bond has a lower yield than a short-term, in this case, a 2-month treasury bond. So usually you think you'd make more money by investing in the long-term on a bond. But in this case, you're making less money over the long term as percentage-wise. And so that's an inversion, because it shouldn't be that way. And what that means is as people buy bonds, the yield goes down. So what that means is everybody's flying to kind of quality or safety by buying 10-year bonds. So the yield goes down because the more people buy, then the price goes up. And that means the return on those will go down over time. So that means that people are going to buy in the 10-year, and they're not betting in the short term. And that usually, or every time actually, so this guy, Campbell Harvey, he came up with this dissertation in 1986 where he said the last 4 recessions were predicted by this inversion. So you can see inversion here, and recession, inversion here, recession, inversion here, recession. And then, so this right here, he said this, and then for the next 3 recessions after it, it played true. So he was proven to be right. And here we go, 3 inversions, 3 recessions, and now we're inverted again. As a matter of fact, that chart was from an article. This article, by the way, is from 2019, where it was explaining this, and because we had just started a dip and people started talking about that in 2019. Then we had COVID and kind of made things crazy, but now you've got it to where it's very much inverted. So that's where, Abe, you brought it to me right a couple months ago, just talking about this concept that there should be a recession coming, like no matter what anybody is saying to try to argue against it, right? That's what you were alluding to, correct?
Yeah, I think the proof is in the chart, really, and history tends to repeat itself in this way. And yeah, I think we're feeling a lot of the slowdown happening. Clearly, the end of 2022 was kind of a shock for a lot of people, and I think the conversations were, what do we do here? What's going to happen? What's going on with the market? What do you think about it? Do you think we'll be out of this soon? And those type of talks. So I don't want to be like a doomsdayer or like a too strong of a pessimist or whatnot, but I think it's safe to say that we're not out of it, and so I think what you and I have talked about is to be real about where we're at, what the market is doing, and to not like just pump agents with fluff, right? Or give them kind of that like that dopamine, everything's going to be okay hit, right? But really then prescribe a little bit more of hard work, more sophistication, a chance to build yourself up here and all that. And so, but I think generally people who study the economy and are making predictions on what's going to happen, make bets based on what happened, are betting that we're going to see a recession here, if not maybe already starting it, right? So
well, and that's when you said make bets. That's the key, because what people don't understand is that there's certain things that are causal, right? Like there's variables that cause something to happen, and then there could be other variables that counter that, right? So like, hey, just because there's a recession doesn't mean that home prices fall. We've seen that sometimes home prices fall in a recession, sometimes they don't. So we know that that's not causal, or I mean, we know that can be causal, but it doesn't mean it has to, because other variables can. But the yield curve inversion is actually predictive. It's not causal. That doesn't cause anything. But what it's telling you is that most people are betting on a recession, because they're saying, we don't trust this short term. We don't want to have our money back in 2 months. We want it back in 10 years. We want to put it safe for 10 years. We don't want it back safely in 6 months. So it's a macro indicator that people that are in the know of what they're seeing a lot of information are betting that we're not going to be that good in the short term. And so that's, and then there's two arguments against that I read, which is basically, one is that that they think that there's going to be, let me see here, I have it here. It's basically, there's something called secular stagnation, where it's not a recession, but it's just really slow growth due to really low demand, even when interest rates are lowered slowly. So basically just like a stagnation. And that's why they think people are betting that. It's not that they're betting on a recession. They're just betting that the economy's not going to grow that much. So there's no reason, which that's one argument. And the other one is that basically people are saying, well, if near-term inflation right now, let's make this simple. You're getting 5% on a short-term yield, right? But inflation right now is 4%. So you're only getting a 1% yield, because right now inflation is going up 4% every month. And so even though you're getting 5%, you're basically getting a percent profit. Whereas if you have a 10-year bond and you think inflation is going to end up being 2% on average over the next 2 years, and you're only getting 4% on that one, so you're getting less, 4%, but you're still up 2% versus 1%, because inflation is going to be lower over the next 10 years. So that's the other argument. But I just think that most people think those are kind of rationalizations that people are trying to do, kind of to say like, everything's fine, don't worry, don't panic. But I think that if the last 7 times in a row it's predicted, I think it's a smarter way to think that could happen. But what does that mean though, right? So let's say there's a recession, let's say this, and I think that with the housing market, speaking about not being rosy, is I think there's 2 people we're talking to, is again, realtors who are thinking about their own personal incomes and earning potential over the next several years. And then they're tasked with advising clients on whether they should buy or sell, or what they should do. And I think that that's where, we can't sleep at night if we led any of those people astray in any kind of intentional way, whether it was through omission of not saying certain things or whether it was intentional. Obviously, that would be really bad. But I mean, the point is, just by not at least talking about these things out of fear of scaring people, I think that's a mistake. And I think that's where agents, they should be fearful of they shouldn't be deterred by scaring people into making a decision one way or the other. They should be honest and be able to explain it comprehensively. And that's where that sophistication comes in, because people shouldn't really try to time markets, in my opinion. They shouldn't try to speculate where the market's going. They should only make a good financial decision. Like, can I afford these payments? Do I have some reserves that if things go a certain way, I can still make my mortgage payments? Or if you're an investor, can I sustain some vacancy, right? If my tenants don't pay me, if my tenants move out and I can't find anybody, if the rents just go down in general and I have to take lower rents, can I, and we'll talk about that in the investable part. But I think that the whole idea here is that, you've got people who are just sort of like trying to give you hopeful information rather than, what the real data might show. And so I'll just go one more quickly through some slides and then we'll get just to talking about it. But I want to just share, what I looked at. Let's see here. If you look at outstanding credit card balances have been gradually rising, and then now they've kind of spiked up a little bit here. The interest rate has spiked, as we know, and so the interest rates have spiked on that credit. The car rent interest rates on auto loans spiked. We've seen that the forbearance has actually allowed people to think, hey, I don't have to pay my student loans, I can take out other debt. So the forbearance, people forgot that was going to come back in some ways in the way that they've behaved. So they've actually borrowed more. And so you see that student loan balances have actually gone up because of the moratorium and those consequences. Auto payment loans, auto loan balances, mortgage loan payments, mortgage loan balances, credit card payments, credit card balances. And by the way, this is from an article, like it was an educational institution that was basically trying to argue for forbearing maybe a little bit longer because of this phenomenon. But will people just continue to borrow at that point? So that's what this data is from. It's not from a doom and gloom type website. It's actually from somebody saying, hey, we should maybe do some more forbearance because people are going to be hurt if these student loans have to be paid, which they are. And so you look at this total debt. And so what I'm thinking is, and this is where, I think that the market will continue to see movement, people selling, is that everybody assumes that no one's going to ever sell a house because they have a 3% interest rate or 2.5% interest rate. But that's assuming they'll never have to. And I think that the Fed is going to be committed to continuing to keep the monetary policy tight and tighten it more maybe until we see liquidity kind of get more disciplined in the lending, and then companies having to tighten their belts and that causing some job loss. And I think that's where we see is that someone that has a 3% mortgage, yeah, of course they're not going to sell if they have to buy a 7% mortgage now, and that doesn't make sense to them. But some people are not going to have a choice because a lot of these people that have a 3% mortgage are still bought at the top of their debt to income, right? So they can't take any more credit card debt payments they have to pay, or when they have to go buy a new car, they might extend themselves a little more because they want to keep the same type of car, and it's a higher payment now. And so there's going to be this little trickling of added on debt payments because interest rates going up and more debt, and people get into more debt then. And I just think some people are going to be forced to sell. I'm not saying they're going to get foreclosed on because they have equity, but they're going to have to sell, right? And that's just the reality. Not everybody, but some people. And so I think that's where we see that the argument of just a 3% mortgage doesn't mean people won't sell because of that. They might unfortunately have to. So that's where I'm seeing that I think the market will stay steady. We still see people selling and buying now, and we're going to start to see maybe some people having to sell, unfortunately, just based on like just the economics not working for them, even though they had the low interest rate. I mean, I would say the data looks too compelling that way. Right. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think you laid it out really well. I think that data is scary for me, to be honest. I think, and then the thesis being, hey, they're going to have to sell, is an interesting one. I don't think I've heard anyone say that yet, but I think that's possibly right. And I think, like in our guts, we've kind of known that might be the case. And it's weird to recount conversations now in this season versus like, what was it, like Thanksgiving 2021, right? Where the talk of Thanksgiving dinner was Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, right? Because a lot of people had
Right.
like, extra money to invest and wanted to do something that was like super high yield and didn't want to miss the train. And then Airbnbs, right? Everyone, their grandmas really were like buying Airbnbs to get more passive income. And so it's interesting to think now the conversation has become a little bit more, hey, how about those T-bills?
Right.
Really, really like safe bet type of investments.
Right.
And then like we've been talking about, hey, what is life like in another state? Right? California obviously has really high cost of living, really high cost of real estate, and it doesn't seem to be kind of going down. And we all know this, if we're in the field.
Right.
That offers are still getting made, and in bunches for good homes. And it just feels like something needs to break. Otherwise, we really need to think of the alternative. So I think what I would kind of dovetail on what you're saying is it could make sense for a lot of people to sell their homes and cash out their equity and not get into the position where they have to default on something, right? Like your credit card debt or
Right.
whatnot, but just kind of wipe everything clean, take your equity, and then go to another place or maybe out of state to live that has lower cost of living, has lower cost of real estate. And there's kind of like again, a little bit of a good trade-off there for people
Right.
to kind of move into. And then the lifestyles are good, right? And so yeah, I think that I'm curious what people are going to be talking about this Thanksgiving, but I wonder if that stuff is more on the table now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this is anecdotal, but I did talk to an agent that works with has worked historically with a lot of veterans. They were linked up with the program for veterans, and so they helped a lot of veterans. And they have two, I think maybe even three, that are actually looking for like an opportunity to have someone assume their loans because they need to get out. And then veteran loans are assumable to some extent, right? They're one of the loans that are. And so and one seems like it may be a kind of a distress, like they need to get out of it, right? And so we know that's a lot of VA. We're stretched DTI, right? What's the DTI for VA loans? They can go pretty high, right?
They go really high. What's scarier there is that the LTVs can go 100%, right?
Right.
Um,
So yeah, and so when you know there's one, that means there's probably more, right? And so we don't live in a vacuum. And I just feel like sometimes we get word of those anecdotal things that are showing cracks before like institutional investors can do the research and analysis on it to make their bets, right? So I think that it's like we're seeing, some of that, and I think that that's where, and that's what's sad about this is that a lot of people were very bullish this last 10 years of just like, hey, life's going to be great forever. We've got everything going. And I just think that there's some people that might not work out for them. Right. And that's just going to be the case. But all that said, I think that's where the sophistication, I mean, I think we could parlay this into the agent of the future, right? Like who is the agent that's going to help these people through this and that's going to stay resilient through these markets and is going to be in that group, in that upper group of growth, right? And I think that's where the sophistication comes in. People who are not only sophisticated in their knowledge of how to sell and help people buy houses and sell houses, but how to really articulate, explain things clearly, how to counsel people, how to have empathy, like soft skills for people in these harder times, if there are those. How to, to be convincing with the right data for people, like, or to help them learn the data and get it, but not to be salesy, right? Not to be gimmicky, right? That's who I think are going to be the agents who are not only going to be more successful, but also maybe be a better service to it's going to be a win-win, hopefully, where they're going to do better. But I do think it's going to take a lot of educating of oneself for the agents who make it to know how to navigate this with sophistication, like just in all areas of how they communicate, how they, so what are your thoughts on?
Yeah, 100%. And, it's interesting to think of the real estate conversation is like really two-sided conversation, right? One is if you're trying to buy a house to live in, there's a conversation there, right? What do you like? What are you looking for? What kind of lifestyle do you want to maintain? And then the other side of the conversation, which has grown over the last few decades is this a good investment decision? Am I going to make money on this deal? Right.
Right.
I think probably when the boomers were buying homes, it was much more of, hey, where do I want to live? Where's my work? What kind of life do I want to set up? Are the school's good there? Let me buy that home. Because I'm not sure they were thinking, someday I'm going to like retire off the equity here. Right. Um,
Right.
it was just more of a lifestyle choice in that sense, and much more now because I dare say the internet, but also just history showing that equity in homes rises and is really a good savings plan almost for your retirement future or whatnot. That making the wrong decision or buying at the wrong time or with the wrong loan or all these things could really affect in a very big way your outcome, in the retirement years and whatnot. So understanding that more, being able to speak to that more as a real estate agent, and to really feel confident about what you're talking about. Um, and then also to be able to say, hey, I don't know the answer right now. Right. I think there's a lot of
Right.
things that are unclear still and still kind of working themselves out. And so instead of feeding you a one line that I heard off of some Instagram influencer post or something like that, that we're all going to be okay or whatever it is, to really be able to speak to someone in terms of where they're at and what they're fearful
Right.
about or what kind of opposition they have right now, to the market, and that it's okay to let it sit there and not feel like you have to win a conversation in that moment to let them know, no, you should buy a house right now, woohoo, or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
and meet people in a more, I dare say, like humanistic way, right? And to walk people through that process, versus just think I need to generate some business right now. Here's the lines that I need to say to really like win over a client to do something, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I generally sense it's that. Again, there's a lot of business to be done still, right? There are still people transacting. And I love that chart you showed, Matt, where it was, the top people then kind of leveled down, and the people who would produce very kind of maybe they're new agents or whatnot, they were producing up. And so we've had that happen in our office too, right? We have agents
Right.
that just seem to be doing extremely well and their careers on the rise, and then we have agents who've been through a cycle, maybe two, and are feeling like, hey, is this where I really need to retire? Um,
Right.
so I think adjusting, for the people that have produced a lot, is tough. It's really tough, but also it kind of puts you now at a new equilibrium with other agents that maybe you've outpaced. And the question becomes, how do I, in this environment, get better? How do I,
Right.
grow back up again in my volume or my transactions? And I think that mindset really, really is a good one. It's a healthy one.
Yeah.
And one where you're reflecting right on yourself again, and thinking, what is this market really showing me that I need to grow in, um, and really taking the time to work on those things versus like, I don't know, find a quick fix to put out the fire you feel, right? I need to go
Right.
get more business, so I'm just go make 1,000 calls today, right? Like, or whatever it is,
Right.
but
Right.
to really kind of start unpacking what's there, right? And what do I believe about this, and what is the action plan I need to put in place to get better, right?
Right,
Um,
right. Well, that's I think people are going to fly to substance in their decisions of who they decide to talk to. Right, they're going to be much more concerned with alleviating their fears than stoking their hopes. Right, and I think that's where I think the conversation is going to go. You know, the gimmicky type. Like, I'll give you one example. We know, and I'm not saying anything negative about this type of business model, but the your home guaranteed sold companies, those type of things, right? Like we'll if you don't we can't sell your home, we'll buy it, right? And in an up only market, that makes sense as a business model. It makes sense as a guarantee, but that guarantee might become into question is right if the market flattens out or has some pullback as far as like really being able to like not have to end up buying people's homes at some point. Right now it's fine, but I just feel like there's going to be a shift to some extent if we do see more inventory coming on, which we could talk about maybe the investability right now, with Airbnbs. Let's talk about Airbnbs for a second. like I think it was about 2 months ago when you had people start talking about the kind of Airbnb crash, right? Um,
Right.
and I think that. But what are your thoughts on that, the Airbnb?
Yeah, like my general thought is anytime you see everyone doing something, chances are there's going to be some type of correction in it. And I think over the last, I don't know how many years, like 5 maybe years or so, Airbnbs have been on fire, right?
Right,
People have picked up handfuls of Airbnbs or found ways to do like rental arbitrage, right? Rent something and then do Airbnb activity out of it, and
right.
then
That's been big, yeah.
yeah, make that arbitrage, right? And so, and then there are people who I personally know that have let's say 10 units or 50 units that they're doing, and out there is I hope you're diversified, right, in where you have these Airbnbs, because literally we're coming to see that the city can change their mind about Airbnb pretty quickly and put in
Right,
new rules, or the need to get a short-term rental license or something like that, and it really changes kind of the landscape pretty quickly. We see that happening right now in New York. There's a little bit of a shakeup in New York City.
right. They
Um,
just, I think, just went live this week, right? Like they
yeah,
pretty much, it's pretty much shut down. I mean, you can't, you pretty much have to get a permit. They're not giving many permits out. It's very hard because your building owner says we don't want to do this. It's done. Um,
that's,
and I think
that's
they
right.
also, yeah, there's a bunch of pretty restrictive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so is Airbnb still a good business? I think so. It's rental, right? It's short-term rental, and there's still a market for it. Um, will it be as easy to make great profits off of Airbnbs? I don't think so. I think you have to think also with Airbnbs a little contrarian. I saw this kind of like glass house in like really remote woods somewhere that some guy picked up for like I think less than $50,000 or whatnot.
right,
And like you wouldn't kind of think of that as a place where you would want an Airbnb. It's not Austin, Texas, or some hot kind of vacation location. But I think the cash flow on that one Airbnb was amazing. Is they bought it for 50, his annual cash flow, and it was like 40,000 or something like that, right?
right. Ridiculous. Yeah,
Because yeah, it's like somewhere that no one is, but it's like presenting an
90%, ninety
experience
percent
that
cap rate.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's crazy, right? It's
yeah.
like but he's kind of figured out this little niche over there where not everyone is,
Right.
so I think that's kind of the key. I mean, with a lot of things, but I definitely think with Airbnb is, hey, if you got like 8 houses in Big Bear right now, I'd be a little
Yeah,
worried, so yeah. But is
yeah,
Airbnb going away, or is this like it's going to change forever? I don't think quite that way, but I think you have to be a little bit more sharp in your shooting,
yeah. Well, the
with
stock's
what you
still.
buy.
I mean, stock's still up. I mean, so people are still betting on it right now. And I think I think one of the things that's happening with them is they're going global, right? So they're expanding into other markets, and so maybe they're going to shrink some revenue in the saturated markets, right? Like you're saying, like Big Bear, places that like just everybody has Airbnb. Like there's tons of not just Airbnbs, but just short-term rentals in general that are managed by a lot of different companies, right? So there's a lot of options, and I think that the product market fit, like we talked about, is like a few days ago, it was really high direct product. I can just drive to the mountains, get away when I can't travel or go anywhere far, and that really sort of created that boom cycle. I think with everybody buying Airbnbs in those areas, or at least just definitely lifted all boats right during that time. And I think that that's going to already has come down, and all travel might even come down soon because I think we're seeing with that debt rising. I think we had that revenge travel, they're calling it, where everybody's going out because of COVID. And I think everybody kind of got that out of their, well, I don't think they got it out of their system, but I think it's just they're not going to be able to sustain that amount of travel, right? And so anyhow, so I think that just that and then you got there's two big forces. There's the NIMBY forces, people not in my backyard, people that don't want the Airbnbs there. And then you've got the kind of anti-gentrification discussion. Like in Canada, apparently it's really bad, right? Where like the rents are going so high in a lot of these touristy cities where people can't live there anymore. And so I think that's part of what New York probably was feeling too. But those two forces, like to anti-gentrification, like we need people to live, especially now where we're seeing institutional investors buying up single family homes. There was a report that said in the next 7 years, up to 40% of single family homes could be owned by institutional investors. And maybe that's what happens with the Airbnb sellers. They sell to institutional investors that can take maybe a short-term hit, because that's the thing is, even if I can't pay my mortgage with the Airbnb, so I have to sell it, it's not working for me anymore. Doesn't mean some institutional investor might go, hey, I'll take that on. We can deal with lower return on investment in the short term. So it doesn't mean there's going to be a market crash. It just means that maybe it might trade hands from the 72% of most single families that are owned by individuals to that smaller pie that's growing of institutional investors to own those things,
Right.
But
Right. And I think what you said about institutional investors, they can take a short-term hit, right? They're not thinking about, hey, I'm going to make X amount of money this year and we need to hit this goal. They really have a few decades in terms of their horizons, right?
right,
Um, and, is real estate investable? Absolutely it is. But I think you really do have to think of that longer horizon, right? It's not, hey, like what could I buy right now, generate some cash flow right now, make a quick
exactly,
equity pump right now, refinance out and kind of repeat that, right? It's definitely a lot more, hey, I'm going to buy and hold. And if I can't hold this for 10 years, right, or 20 years through kind of the murky water, like then I maybe shouldn't think about doing it right now.
right.
But as this economy is kind of doing what it's doing, it's not a bad time to buy right now if you think that long, or
Everything
with
long
that
term,
long
of
of a
course.
view.
Yeah,
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 yeah, we know what the chart says, right, on real estate. It pretty much goes up, over years, right, and time. Are there blips in the market? Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're in one now. But in 20 years from now, will you regret that you bought a home now? I don't think so. Yeah, I'm not
yeah.
sure that
I
you
get
would.
100% agree, especially as inventory tightens with institutions. I mean, if you can get in on owning a property right now, it seems like that's what everybody wants to do. Smart money's doing that, right? So it's just, yeah, but you have to think long term. It's not this short term, like, hey, I'm gonna, you know, make a ton of money off all my Airbnbs right now, and it's that kind of dance might be coming to an end a little bit as far as the kind of crazy money people are making. It doesn't mean you can't make
Right.
some money and have a solid investment for the future, but definitely is not going to be that kind of. And we know that commercial real estate right now is is you know really
It's
showing some
tough.
cracks, right?
Oh, it's
With
tough.
yeah, and that's where the banking crisis could come in, right? Because I think the pretty significant amount of banks who are now over leveraged in their commercial loan portfolio, right? Um, where they're,
Right.
if they had to take the book rate like cuts based on what they actually have, it would be pretty bad, right? It wouldn't look good, of what their
Yeah.
assets. Um,
Yeah. I think commercial, I mean, some economists and people that are kind of really looking at what are the things that are going to really crack first. It's happening commercial, and then commercial paper that is sitting at a bank who's servicing it or hasn't sold a debt or something, could end up creating kind of a waterfall effect for banks, right? And so, why aren't commercial lenders lending right now? Because I think they're wary of that risk, and it could have pretty big
right,
impact on their banks. And so, it doesn't make sense when you hear a story like the one I think David Sachs shared on the All In podcast about him not being able to go get a loan on a building that seems to be doing fine, has a lot of equity in it, and them wanting to, on what is a $15 million building, only give them like $2 million, right?
right,
Um, why is that? Is the bank stupid or something? No, I think they're saying, hey, we don't want to take the risk right now. Like there's some danger there, right? And so we'll
right,
give you a $2 million loan on your $15 million building, but anything more than that, you're going to have to show some collateral or bring in some money so that we can rest assured that we can collect the money from you, right? So
right,
it's like that right now, and I think, I mean, I follow The Real Deal on Instagram. It's an excellent, account that does kind of share like the headlines of what's happening
right,
in commercial real estate right now. every headline is like someone suing someone, someone taking over a building, someone foreclosing, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
or like, I don't know, like $1
Yes,
billion
blood in the
worth of real
streets
estate.
right now.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
huge. It's crazy,
yeah,
right? Like, I think I read something like it was close to $1 billion in real estate, and the guy walked away with $80 million. You say, hey, just give me the 80 million, and now this problem is yours, right?
yeah,
So yeah, so it's tough. And we were just with some commercial guys the other day looking at, some office, and you just get the sense that it's slow right now in leasing and sales, on the commercial side.
yeah.
So but is it a good opportunity? I think maybe it's a great opportunity if you're cash flush and you have the ability to, again, think 10, 20-year horizon, like probably a really good time to start buying some of that stuff up, right? So yeah.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, it's similar to the bonds, right? Don't buy a 2-year bond, buy a 10-year bond. That's a safer rate. It's buy a 10-year real estate investment, not a 2-year real estate investment, right? And that's basically, and I think that's where my see, I feel best it's interesting, and I don't know if you feel this way, but my the way I feel doesn't matter if the market's good or bad. The way I feel is if I feel like I have a handle on it. I feel good if I feel like I have a handle on it, and I feel bad if I feel like I don't. And I think I feel good right now, even though maybe some things are bad, because I feel like I have a good handle right now.
Yeah.
On just where I think I could advise people on just what the facts are and what things looking like. But it's their decision, it's their life, it's their. I think what I would say to somebody is, if you couldn't if you couldn't pay your mortgage, if you were out of income for 6 months, or maybe that's something to think about. If you couldn't pay your mortgage on your rental, if you were out of a tenant for 6 months, or if you couldn't pay your mortgage, if you had a tenant, or for tenant for renter, if you had to take a 20% hit on rents, right? Like whatever that might be, just think that way. And I'm not saying that's what you have to, but something of that nature. I'd have to look at any deal specifically, but I think that's just to think about, like, those reserves if something goes wrong, um, you know, job loss, that kind of thing, or whatever might happen, or just debt payments going up, for yourself, and um,
Yeah, yeah. I could share a little bit about my personal kind of take, but also just story of real estate and it not going well and being able
right,
to sustain. So like I particularly have a property in the Inland Empire. It's a warehouse building, and when it went vacant and we put it on the market, it got overrun by homeless people that came in and squatted, slashed,
right,
vandalized, slashed, literally took anything of value out of there. And so that happened February 2022. So about a year and a half ago. It took us until now to get that place back with power, even because they had stripped the what do you call it, the panel, so
right,
terribly
right,
that we had to get Edison involved and also the city and go through permitting process to put in a new panel. The panel parts were delayed by 33 weeks, in some of the parts. And so it's just been kind of a nightmare, and haven't had a tenant in there, haven't been able to collect rents. We have a mortgage still, right? And taxes to pay and all that, insurance to upkeep. And so I think about it, I'm like, man, if I didn't have the reserve, I could have easily just crapped out on this. Like,
right.
this homeless situation could have really killed me on this, right? Um, so yeah, so I imagine to have that wherewithal and to be able to sustain it is really important. Otherwise, you are putting yourself at risk of maybe losing it, right? And
Yeah,
it being a sunk thing versus a great investment. So yeah, I just think is real estate investable? It is, but just know what you're getting into, you know, and like, and all the positive things and all the pros, but also the cons, um, and really understand that and have a plan for that, right?
yeah,
Um, yeah, and then sometimes even if you plan as best you can, all it takes is, the property sit vacant for like 2 weeks, and then it's overrun, and you have a year and a half ordeal in your hands, right? So why I'm saying that is because I feel like we're in an environment where we get a lot of information off of like sensational headlines or quick Instagram videos and whatnot. And I know you
hmm,
and I, Matt, have kind of felt the temptation to like do that, right? Or get in there and give some thought leadership, but it does feel unnatural, right? To have a sensational headline all the time or try to attract attention in that way. versus just, again, kind of what we're more about is really sophisticated thought that we want to share to people. It might not be the most, I know, again, like ear catching thing, right, or eye
Right.
catching thing, but hopefully it's something solid for people to listen to and to really evaluate things with. And so I say that because, yeah, real estate, I feel like there's been a lot of people online saying, hey, you could do this right now. You don't have to put any money in and you can make X amount of dollars. Look at my Bentley, like I just got this off of my, like, whatever. Right. And so
Right. Right.
I think and I think both of our, like, almost plea with people is, hey, um, don't just follow that, right? Um,
Yeah.
get a holistic kind of view on what that is, and really understand and make great decisions based off of a holistic view versus just, hey, that guy did it, and he's making a lot of money on Instagram or YouTube or whatever it is. I want to do that too. I want to get there quick, right? Yeah, I'd say maybe right now is the time to kind of fight that urge and develop a really good plan for long-term success versus like a short, quick flip, right?
Right. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I think that yeah, absolutely. And I think that, like, we've had some agents, we've talked about this, where it's like doing some innovative ways of maximizing rents on a property, right? Like buying a home, putting an ADU, figuring out some things like that. And I think those are still very valid. Like, those are good ideas, but again, just viewed through a longer term lens than a short term lens, and to think about, like, maybe there might be some little bit of softness in rents. I don't think rents are going to go down like crash or anything like that, but I do think that as as people have to consolidate households, people move, like, hey, I'm going to take on a roommate, or hey, I'm going to go live back with my parents for a year. Um, there's people that are married with kids and go live with family, for a while when things get hard, right? So it's households can contract, like, right, people, and so that'll free up inventory, and rents can take a little softening there, right? So, um, again, we're not talking about this next month, or no one knows when this is going to happen, but just if you look at the indicators, there's going to be there's for sure going to be, I mean, again, we can maybe band-aid up some more things and go a little longer on some of this stuff. Maybe that could happen, right? Like, some people think that might happen. Like, the Fed just goes, hey, forget it. We can't, I don't want to be the one that kills them, people's, jobs, right? But I think that Powell seems pretty disciplined, and like he's staying the course on that. Doesn't mind being that guy. I'm sure he doesn't like it, but he probably feels a responsibility. But either way, my point is, at some point something's going to give, right? And we don't know when that is. And so we're not saying go buy foreclosure courses right now or anything like that. But because we still have a lot of equity right now anyway. So I don't think there's not going to be foreclosures anytime soon. Foreclosures could happen in a few years, but I think that people can live in a house for a long time after they get into trouble. It takes a while for those banks to get the process, so there's a lot of things that can happen. So I don't think that's any kind of impending thing. I don't think there's any kind of crash coming. I just think that we can't keep going up like this. Something's going to give. And I think we're
yeah,
seeing what it is. And I think we're seeing what it is. It's going to be a debt crisis, a personal debt crisis for people, and then some job loss that's going to combine to just make people have to make harder decisions than they've had to make the last 10 years with their lives.
it's right. And again, if we can ask people to, you know, um, to do something positive, it's literally, hey, take an inventory of what you have in terms of spending, even, right?
Right.
What's necessary? What things do you spend on that you realize, why am I spending like literally, why am I paying for
Right.
this or that? Or why is this important to me? Why is that important to me? And I think what you tend to find is actually there's a lot of like marketing that we've been like kind of victim to, right? That says, hey, if you have this or that, you're going to be happy. It's like going to make your life way better or whatever it is. And some things like that are true, but I wonder how much of what we have are just trappings, right? And
Yeah.
you mentioned like even families with kids then moving in with their parents again, and that being kind of like like it feels shameful, right? Like I can't do that. Like I still need to somehow max out a credit card and pay my mortgage payment or something like that, so that I don't
Right.
have to get
Right.
into that situation. And I want to say, hey, all that pressure is really not that important. It's like kind of a weird pressure that you get from things that don't really matter, right? And so
Right. Right.
let's look at really what matters here, right? If you have a family, the quality of life for your kids, their financial future. As a parent, I think of that a lot, right? And it stops me sometimes from, buying maybe, over buying a car or something like that, right? I still
Right, right,
dream and we talk about it, but I do think sometimes, hey, that's taking like money out of my kid's pocket in their future. So I want to do
right,
something where in 20 years from now, this thing multiplies versus spent it on a $400,000 car, right? Or something.
right.
So,
No,
um,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah, but I
And I think
think
that's
taking
that
hard looks like
resist.
that.
Yeah.
No, but I
No,
think
no.
taking hard looks like that is it's a good time to do it, and I think you'll find pretty quickly like there are things you can do to just trim things down and really live, a good life and a good lifestyle, but not be trapped by things or possessions or some appearance that you have to keep up, right, to feel good about yourself or whatnot. So, I don't know.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and I think that's where kind of we were talking about the taking your foot off the gas, and I think that, maybe take your foot off the gas on spending, right? Um, some people, someone just joked to me the other day that there's a comedian that said something about people like some people like they tell you how much money they make by how much money they spend. Like that's their way of telling you how much money they make. They won't tell you how much money I make, but I'll tell you how much money I spend, so you can do the math and figure out that I got it going on, right? So I think it's like and I think that's where maybe people should take the break, put the brakes on the spending and keep their foot on the make earning, right?
Right.
And I think that's where that's where the topic of keeping your foot on the gas was that I've seen a lot of people decide to like even in a good market. There was an agent that came to me and is starting to do flips. This is a couple years ago, and I said, "Listen, do the flips. By all means, you should do it, but don't take your foot off the gas of your sales business, like your residential sales business, because income. You always want to have income. You always want to keep a steady flow of income in. Like you can do some speculative investing, but make sure the income's never take your foot off the gas of that income, because going months without income is like losing money on investments essentially, and if you have ability to make income, especially in real estate where we can make a lot of money and live a very good lifestyle if we do it right, don't try to give that up for something that's maybe seems sexier, maybe seems more some sort of explosive upside, right? Try that explosive upside, do that, but keep your foot on the gas of your real estate business. And right now, if some agents are thinking of, hey, I want to get another job, or I might need to do something because maybe they're part of that 50%, or that has the big dip, and maybe they got even more than a 50% dip. There's some agents who got a 70-80% dip in their income this last year, and they're thinking of getting another job. It's like that might be, but keep the gas on your real estate business, because that's going to be that's you just don't want to give that up, right? You get another thing, but don't give up your income. Don't give up the client base and all the people that you can service and help, and especially in time like this, keep your foot on that gas. Like, do what you have to do, but keep your foot on the gas of your main business, and is what's really important right now.
100%, 100%. And, I got into the business towards the end of 2009, really, as a real estate broker. And at that time, you couldn't give away a house, right? Like no one wanted to buy a house. It was tough market. There was
Right.
short sales getting done, right? Or starting to get done, and foreclosures happening. I remember during those times, people would flush cement down, toilets just to screw the house up, right? It was kind of a really crazy market in that sense. But I felt it was the best time to get in the market, right? And become a real estate broker, because the opportunity is going to come, right? And so it feels like right now is also a time where, yeah, maybe some people have changed jobs because of the income pressure and whatnot. But I feel like this is a great time for agents to keep the foot on the gas so that they can establish themselves even greater than they have, right? And then when the next wave comes, because it will come, you're ready with a bigger net, so to speak, right? So,
Absolutely,
I,
100%. Yeah.
yeah, and so again, we've had a conversation with agents too, because it really hurts to not make the income, and we're not saying, hey, that doesn't matter, like just somehow plow through. It's no, you got to find a way to maintain like what you need to maintain. But if you're thinking about making a wholesale change, to your real estate career, I still feel like this is one of the best careers you can have, And I know we both feel that way. That's why we do what we do. And times like this really present opportunities for you in the future. And so, shore up if you need to, income wise, but I would double down right now on your real estate business, and
Right.
really establish yourself even greater. And um, so yeah, and I think some of that for people is like soft skills. Some of that for you might be like a new geo farm around where you live, where you really want to get established. Some of that might be, hey, I really need to systematize myself a little bit more, right? And what I do
Right.
with my SOI and all that. And I think this is the right time to do all that, right?
Right.
And get more sophisticated in that sense.
Yeah. Well, I think the agent of the future is going to be able to generate business from their sphere of influence in a very, what do you call it? Service and level of, as far as like, it's just about just how well they take care of people, how much they really earnestly look out for their people, because that's always needed, and they will get referrals that way too. People who take care of a community, a geo farm, not because they send a bunch of flyers out or postcards out, but because they're really building communities and equity in the community through their service, through their what they do to help the community, what they do to educate the community. And then people who know how, once they get a listing, and we talked about these three circles before, when they get a listing, how to become the expert immediately in that area through how well they market that listing, how well they reach out to the community, how the kind of job they do for that client. It's a giant billboard in that community for that period of time that they can get more business. And I think that so my mentor in real estate, when I talked to him, we worked at a company together, and he was high up in that company for a time, and he was saying that he saw a trend that disturbed him, was that, and this is back in 2013, that people want to make a lot of agents into baby birds. That's what he said. That basically, just stay in the nest. We'll bring you the worm. Your job is to close it, right? That makes metaphors, but the point is that they're never going to get out of the nest. There's a lot of agents who are never going to get out of the nest, and I see that right now with a lot of teams where, and I'm not suggesting you shouldn't join a team as an agent. You can learn a lot, maybe from your team leader. You can get some income that's more secure. You can learn transaction processes and things like that by doing deals. So there's nothing wrong with that. But I just think the agent of the future needs to quickly, right now, get into a place where they learn to be the person that's top funnel creating leads. And I even mean that, like with Zillow. I think that I think Michael Preet, the guy that does the research industry, just came out with a thing called the last mile problem. And I've been telling agents for years now about the last mile, because I read an article, just happened to read an article about Amazon.com last mile delivery people. There was a company in Arizona that had built a whole business just around Amazon, giving them that last mile. And that's called concentration risk, right? They didn't have a business. They had a customer. They had one customer, and that customer decided to change things up on them to where they went out of business, because not only did their employees start to unionize against them, so they were feeling pressure from their employees because they were growing big off of Amazon, but they also had Amazon decide, we're going to change the terms. We want to go out to smaller providers and charge a little bit more from them, and whatever it was, and it just killed them. And so they built almost what they might have considered an empire, but it was built on just the mercy of a Lord Amazon that could take it away anytime, right? And I think that's where Zillow is at right now. Zillow's been a great boom for a lot of people, right? Like a lot of agents have made a ton of money off Zillow, and it's been great for them. And I think that it can continue for a lot of people. But if your business is just based on that one spout or a significant portion, and you're also feeding all these other agents that are junior agents to you off of that as well, you're two things that start to contract. You're either going to start taking more leads on for yourself, or you're going to have to start cutting the commissions you're paying out to the agents who are doing that. So I think there's going to be a squeeze there. And I feel like it's better to get ahead of that if you're an agent. And again, I'm not saying leave your team and leave Zillow. I'm just saying be mindful of it and look at your own situation. But I do think the agent of the future is going to be, and it always has been, but are people that can generate for themselves, not at the mercy of online. Online leads are great added extra value you can have your business, but you have to be able to build off from your sphere of influence. You have to be able to build off of a geographical area, and you have to be able to build off any opportunity you have with a listing if you're going to survive any market, and again, have the substance, have the sophistication, be able to have honest, hard conversations with people that are in their best interest always, and you know, people will respect you, people will come back to you, that people will refer their friends and family because they know you'll take good care of them. And your messaging on social, because we know social is a huge part of getting your name out there and getting your brand out there. I think you have to stop having the tone of a salesperson and start having a tone of a real professional that understands our market, understands what they're going through and how they're feeling right now, not being tone deaf to that. So I think that's where I see it going. Um, all the AI talk, AI is going to help a lot of people. So yes, start embracing AI, but fundamentals and just and making sure you're developing yourself. Because even if you're using AI, if it's gimmicky and it's not going to make you a better realtor and you're not a better person and always developing yourself, it's just some a little bit of noise that you're making, before you ultimately stumble. Um,
Yeah. This might be a slight tangent, but when you said, "Hey, be in charge, kind of your own destiny, create your own like business," right?
right,
Um, I would even take that a little further, and we've talked about this, Matt, about real estate agents. We sell other people's property. That's our job, right?
right,
Most of the time, right? We create, trust and have relationships with people that then trust us to sell their property. I think again, at some point, if that becomes frustrating for a real estate agent, it's not um, like, what do you call it, pivoting to then create your own real estate product, in my opinion, right?
mm-hmm.
um, to be able to use the skill as a real estate agent to then buy something that has some unlocked value in there, and then unlock the value and then sell it, right? um, so I don't want to like kind of recommend that to people as a distraction, you know. But we do feel like that's a real opportunity, and for that reason, we have, kind of this reef thing set up, the real estate investment fund for our company. That in small ways we can kind of create the product. We know that demand is there. I live out here in an area where a lot of the homes built in like the 50s, and my neighbor has been living there for almost like 70 years, right? So um,
Right,
yeah, the house just came on the market, and everything in there is original. Like it's original, and it's still nice, but there's a lot of value to unlock. And so sometimes I even think of that and say, hey, I think if we just did this, like it would actually increase the price by a lot. And um,
right.
so I think there's those opportunities there, because obviously there's demand right now, and the good homes are selling quickly. Yeah, I again don't want to encourage that
No,
as a distraction, but
no,
it's it's
yeah,
it's not a bad thing.
but it's not bad to add to your business model. Like, that's some of the realtors that are in the best financial position. I know there's one local that said just buy a house every year, right, and just hold it for long term. And now, in 30 years, you have 30 houses. And then sometimes when you start doing well with that in a bigger market, you can decide to buy 3 or 4 houses one year, right? But the point is, I do think it's the McDonald's model, right? McDonald's is the largest owner of real estate, right? One of the largest owner of real estate, because they buy the plots of land that they put their franchises on, right? That's kind of the model that they started adopting. But imagine a McDonald's like 5 years in was like, you know what? Let's just buy real estate, right?
Right.
This is what we're really in. They realized that there was a synergy between having a fast food restaurant that needed real estate and charging people basically rent and letting them do their turnkey operation while they accumulated real estate. So the way I look at it is, if you're a realtor and as you sell, you're going to come across opportunities. Like the agent I was telling you that has these VA people that are looking to have them assume their loans, or it's you'll come across opportunity because we're in the business. And as long as you're not taking advantage of the people that you're there primarily to serve, but you find a good deal, working deal, you can definitely start building your portfolio of real estate and have investment opportunities, because we know the market. We know we're subject matter experts in this area of investment, and so we should be able to make good decisions, and come across great opportunities. So that's why I think it is. I think absolutely every agent should always be open to buying and, like I said, unlocking value for sure. And that's why we understand as a brokerage, and that's why we want to create this opportunity with our agents to have that buying power. Because some agents maybe are like, hey, I found a great opportunity, but I don't have the ability, or I have the opportunity, but I'm a little bit risk adverse, so I'd like to have some other people in with it, and I also want to have some of their eyes on it because maybe I think it's a great deal, pretty sure of it, but I want to have so that's why we have this to where we can collectively start to make some moves in that direction. So yeah, I'm excited about that for sure. So
yeah, it's the goal, I think, for ourselves and our agents really is to become a real estate professional, right? To really know real estate, master it as much as you can. But I do think right now, or there's, even in my career, there's been no, it's just, let me go close that deal. Let me just make that money. Let me just, do this and that, and then move and shake, and not really build the professionalism and the mastery in real estate. And so that'd be my, I think, kind of like a encouragement to others too, is, hey, never take your foot off the gas, become a master, in real estate, all things real estate, right?
100%.
If right now you still don't know, I don't know, what type of countertops there are, it's kind of a problem,
Right.
right?
Right.
If you don't understand basic building material stuff, I want to encourage you, hey, study that, learn it, become an expert on homes, right?
Right.
And buildings, right? The actual dwelling, become an expert in that. Yeah, don't just be someone that is satisfied to open doors for people and write offers for people. Build a sophistication in that way. And so
Yeah.
yeah.
Hey, get out there, see neighborhoods, see places, be adventurous, go out, try other cities, learn the market. We live in Southern California, get out and understand markets. You want to be able to have conversations with people about alternatives where they can live. I know we want to be hyper local and focused, but I mean, that's usually agents try, but know what's out there. Know what their options are for people, right? The more options you can give to people as far as where they can live, where lifestyle can take them, where generally good school systems are for people who want that, where good walking areas are, good, just get out there and really understand and learn the market, because we should also be experts at locale. And as we say, proximity is everything. So we should know what different proximities might offer people. So yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we're should wrap up. And
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah. Well, hey, enjoy the rest of your week. I'll see you soon. But thanks everyone
Yeah.
for being here. By the way, if you can subscribe so you get notified of these, and if you want to like it, that's great. But I will say this: if you're not on YouTube as a habit, you really should be, because that could be part of your development. Is definitely educating yourself through YouTube. There's a lot of great content out there. I'm sure all of you know that. But for those of you that this is a strain to get on here to watch us, make sure you're putting YouTube as part of your habits, right? Of what you intake, because there's a lot of great information for you to learn from. So anyway, thanks everyone.
Right.
All right, Dave.
Have a great weekend.
Talk to you. All
Yeah.
right, take care.
Get you soon. All right. Bye now.
Oops.